we're going to start with Sarah, and she's going to start us with
gender data bias, or an average woman in a world designed for men. So, hello, I am an average woman. Am I in the right place? There we go. I am an average woman. I'm average height. I like to think I'm exceptional, but really I'm not very. But I do have an average man here. Thank you, average man. Dave doesn't know what he's up here for. It's nothing too scary. So you can see that Dave is different from me. Dave is taller than me, stronger than me, has a deeper voice.
Indeed.
And has bigger hands. Oh, look at those hands. He is not the same as me. Thank you, Dave.
You're very welcome.
So, how is the world designed for Dave and not for me? Well, this all started off when I was on a Zoom call. So I am the Scrum Master here at Northcoders, which means that I run a lot of meetings. And in the course of these meetings, I was having trouble making my voice heard. So I would be speaking, and whenever one of the rest of my team, all men, would talk, it would cut my mic and prioritize their voices instead. And this would happen even when they weren't the people who were directly talking. They could be in a room with a man talking in the background, and background man would be beamed into the meeting, cutting off whatever I said. And I said to the rest of my team, this is sexism. And they said, no, Sarah, it's not sexism. There must be a problem with your internet connection, or maybe your microphone isn't very good, despite the fact I was using exactly the same equipment as them. And I said, no, this is sexism, and I'm going to prove it to you. And that's the genesis of this talk. So look out, team. So I started looking at software that detects speech, and it's 70% more likely to recognize male speech than it is to recognize female speech. And that's despite the fact that studies have shown that women have significantly higher levels of speech intelligibility than men. They use longer vowel sounds, they speak more slowly. It should be the other way around, but it's not. And why is that? And the problem is with the data sets that we use to train these voice recognition technologies. They are overwhelmingly male. The most popular one, with thousands and thousands of voices, has 69% male voices. And when we train machines on biased data, we get biased machines. Now, of course, the gender data gap is not just a problem for me and my Zoom calls. It gets a lot more serious. I know it's a big problem, but it gets even bigger. So when we look at medical trials, 90% of them exclusively use male subjects, so as not to have to account for women and their fluctuating hormones. And that means that medical care for women is much poorer than it is for men. If you're a woman, you're 50% more likely to die of a heart attack because your symptoms present differently to men, and because you respond to drugs differently than men do, but the research has been done on men. When you look at car crash test dummies, the EU test requirements say that all tests must be carried out on an average male dummy. And of course, as we've seen with Dave, that's not the same size as me. And that means that the headrests don't work for women, the seats don't work for women, the seatbelts don't work for women, and a woman is 71% more likely to be injured in a car crash, despite the fact that men have more crashes. And in fact, when a woman dummy was introduced in 2011, but only in the passenger seat, because we all know that women don't drive, the rating of some cars dropped from a 5-star safety rating to one where some of the seats had a 40% chance of death at 35 miles per hour crashes. So it is a matter literally of life and death. And what can be done about this? So the key thing is to include women at 3 key stages in product development: user research, user testing, and production monitoring. So user research. Now, my key message here is when you're doing user research, talk to women. And second part of this, listen to what they have to say. So people find it really difficult to see problems that they don't experience. When I had my problem with my Zoom calls, my colleagues just couldn't believe that it was sexism because it's not something that they've really had to deal with in their everyday life. When Apple brought out a comprehensive health tracker that they rolled out with all of their smartwatches and iPhones, it included so many different types of health tracking, but it didn't include a period tracker. But because they hadn't asked women what they wanted from a health tracker. The second thing is user testing. Your testing is only as good as the pool of testers that you have. And that means that it's really important when you're developing a product, don't just use the developers as your test subjects, particularly in tech when they're likely to be overwhelmingly male. And be aware of the data sets that you're using and any bias that they have built into them. When some researchers retrained voice recognition software using non-sexist data, so equal numbers of male and female voices, they decreased the bias within it by 2/3. And the third thing is production monitoring. Is everything working as you expect it to? So for this, I want to talk about emojis. So the Unicode Consortium, the people who create the codes upon which emojis are based, thought that they were doing everything right. They developed all of their codes in gender-neutral language. They would say, make an emoji for a runner, make an emoji from a police officer. But the overwhelming result was that there were basically no female emojis. Emojis were almost 100% male. And that's because although they were sending things out in gender-neutral language, they were sending it to designers who would then say, oh, a runner. Here's a nice picture of a man running. Oh, a police officer. Here's a nice picture of a male policeman. And so in a sexist world, being gender neutral is not necessarily the way to achieve equality. And so the way the Unicode Consortium fixed that was they started specifying the gender. They said, make an emoji of a female runner, make an emoji of a female police officer. And that idea of making sure that you acknowledge the existence of women comes into data collection as well. Like when you're collecting your user feedback on your product, make sure that you are separating it by gender. If you don't check in with women's experience directly, you won't know what the issues are. So there we go. My key message, it seems like an obvious one, is don't forget that women exist and make sure that you're including women when you're researching, when you're testing, and in the users of your product, because women are people too. Thank you.